Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this special Harvest webinar focusing on the COVID-19 pandemic, designed to address and answer the key questions that are keeping landscape professionals up at night. I'm Cindy Code, and I'm your moderator for today's webinar. These are challenging times for the landscape industry. The harvesters have seen it all, but certainly nothing of this magnitude. Remember, the industry has been in difficult positions before, and it's survived and grown even stronger because of it. Since our last COVID-19 webinar, the harvesters have been working one-on-one with their clients to guide them through these unprecedented times. For several weeks, the harvesters have been working around the clock, taking your calls, and gathering the most up-to-date information to answer your questions. Some of the questions we'll cover today include, what happens if one of your employees is exposed to a person with COVID-19? What if an employee misses work to care for a child whose daycare is closed? What is being done to define landscape work as essential? But before we get to today's webinar, we'd really like to thank our partners, Verizon Connect, who is a great fit with the Harvest goal of addressing business pain points. Now more than ever, safety and employee accountability benefits are very helpful, particularly if vehicles are being garaged at home. So thank you to Steve Diogo and the team over at Verizon Connect. We'd also like to thank our partner, Boss LM, another product that can save you lots of time in your business. Boss LM provides your business with the ability to track gross margins by crew and by day. Thank you to Mike Cousins and his team at Boss LM. Today, we're lucky to have 5 of our head harvesters, Bill, Ed, Fred, Steve, and Chris, to lead you through today's important topic. Collectively, these harvesters have more than 150 years of landscape industry experience. They have walked in your boots, literally. So we encourage you to ask questions. We have your pre-sent questions that were sent in ahead of time, and we'll have time today to answer questions, so be sure and write them in the box, the question box on your screen, and we'll get to as many as possible during today's webinar. So thanks again for your time and attention. Let's get started with today's webinar.
Thank you very much, Cindy. As we said, we're going to be trying to get ideas on how you can handle the situation better, and you're going to learn what other companies are doing, okay? Just before the seminar, Steve got knocked off. Let's see if he's with us. Steve, you with us? Okay, so Steve's not on yet. So we're going to start with harvester Chris. Let's move over to Chris now. Now, Chris covers marketing. He's really a marketing sales expert. So why don't we start with some of the questions that he's got? Because, you know, many companies out there are down on sales. I mean, significantly down. One client told me yesterday that one of his largest contracts chopped 50%. Okay, they lost 50% revenue. Of course, they could reduce the amount of work by that, but still, that doesn't help in the long run, does it? So let's ask a few questions to Chris. One that comes up all the time is, hey, Chris, what marketing techniques should I be using now to generate sales?
A very good question, Ed. And a lot of times, you know, with some of the older approach to sales in our industry, such as door knocking and cold calling and, you know, relationship-based selling, which are all still good tactics, they're very, very tough to do right now. People aren't in their offices. You can't go and see people, of course. So that makes it really tough. And so it's a really great time to start a digital marketing effort. I always recommend to any company to 6 sources of lead generation and to really diversify those, you know, to have some digital concepts, some direct campaigns, some referral campaign, an old customer list that were, you know, old prospect lists that they go back to and continue to work that over because they already have the data. So diversifying your sources of lead generation are very, very important. Looking for unique ways to generate sales right now. So another thing that I would say for like consumer focused clients, you know, the residential people, One thing that you can do right now is focus on like Google or social platform based ads, and those can get somewhat expensive, but do your research or work with a really great company to do those ads. What you can do, like for Facebook, for example, they have a section that you can do a lookalike audience. It's one of the most successful ways that I've done some advertising on Facebook. And there's a way to upload a list of your clients, and so it takes a picture of what they look like, and then they're able to basically take a look at that data, find clients, and then match them with other people that look like that with their demographics. So some couple of few areas there: websites, search engine optimization, direct campaigns, direct mail, sending small items sometimes can really be really great. So try that. I think that you'll see that there are a lot of people out there still looking.
Fantastic, Chris. What market types do you think are best to go after right now, and which ones maybe should the landscapers avoid?
Well, anything, obviously still operating, hospitals, senior living, HOAs, all those are going to be pretty consistent still in most cases. Some of them might be cutting back some, and that's normal, but they're going to continue. A hospital is always going to continue. The senior living, they are going to continue. So focusing on those. Which ones to avoid are somewhat tough. I don't know that I would say to avoid any of them because you want to keep your pipeline going. But it's like maybe put a little more emphasis on your marketing and outbound approach towards those hospitals or senior living facilities. But so I would continue to market to your normal markets that you tackle as well. And the truth of the matter is it's tough right now, and a lot of times salespeople can really become beaten down by the moment at hand. And so what I would recommend is to encourage them and understand that this is going to be hard, and to keep your head up and keep moving. You will start to close sales. There are people out there looking. And just as this is hard for your company, it's hard for other companies that may be weaker. And so I would go ahead and take a look at that as well, to see if there's any work that you can pick up from companies that might even end up going out of business at this time.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Steve. I think Bill has a few questions.
I do. Thanks, Harvester Ed. Say, Chris, this is one I get asked all the time. Do websites really help generate sales? And how do they generate sales? And is it worth the cost to tune mine up or redo mine, especially in this time of challenge? Money's a little thin. What should I be doing?
It's a good question, and it's the easy answer is yes. Good websites generate sales, and the key is that good websites generate sales. What I would compare it to, what you want to look at it like is that good websites are going to cost you money. I get approached all the time, and I hear the phrase, "Well, I can have so and so build it for $2,500," and the idea is that there's no way they can source an entire creative team to build a really effective website. So really great websites do generate really great leads if it's built correctly, and you should have whoever's building your website should have a full creative staff on with them to help build that. Now, with that said, how does websites generate leads? Well, there's a new statistic out in 2019 that 67% of the buyer's journey is now done digitally. People do their research, and I challenge you to think about yourself. When you go to buy something, do you look it up online before you buy it? Almost 100% of the time, unless it's a commodity. So people are checking you out, even you business guys, your business to business guys that are working with project managers and property managers. All those people are still doing their research, and they change in and out so often that there are new people coming up that have to learn about new companies. And I think those are the ones that that you're going to capture here. So, go back to that. And the other piece to that statistic is 57%. First there were 67% of the buyer's journey is now done digitally, but 57% of the purchase decision is completed before the customer ever calls a supplier. So, you want to take a look at this. This is, websites, they're going to keep your entire business going if they're generating. And it's like any other tool in your arsenal. If it's not working, then you upgrade that tool. If you had a skid steer that stopped running or a truck that stopped running, you would upgrade it, or you would get a new one. You would keep it working and making you money. Website's going to drive the pulse of the entire rest of the company. So it's very important to have a great website and digital content strategy.
Yeah, good answer. Can you give us kind of a range to really overhaul or redo a very effective website? What's the price range on something like that, Chris?
Well, so it kind of depends on how much content you have. So, how many services you have. You're looking probably anywhere between 6 and probably 25,000. And some of the higher end packages are going to include regular monthly search engine optimization, blogging. So it's not just the website, but it's a package that's spread out through usually out an entire year. But those are going to be a lot more effective. And just like you'd spend money on any other marketing campaign, that is continuing to grow your regular monthly marketing, basically. So adding those blogs, doing the search engine optimization, doing email blasts, stuff like that. So sometimes those can be rolled into website packages, but for just websites, usually you're looking between 6 and 9,000, depending on how much content is needed.
Sure. Yeah, just out of curiosity, I've been recommending video testimonials. Are you an advocate of that, and does that help sales as well?
Yeah, so if it's done right, video or blogs in general, the thing to keep in mind is that you have to make something that people want to see. So if you have somebody on the video, make sure that they're a little bit more lively. Ed LaFlamme is a perfect example of the type of person you want on your videos because he's enjoyable to watch, to where if you let somebody that speaks in a monotone habit, that just does not attract people. So if you're going to start creating some content, it's going, new content strategies, videos, blogs, all that is going to drive the most traffic. And the way to think of it is like little fishing hooks out in the big pool of the internet. And each video optimizes your site for a new search term, which is going to send people to your site.
Oh, good stuff. Hey, I've got another question that we get all the time here. We get clients that want to suspend services or reduce services. I had one the other day. A client called up and Goodwill, the Goodwill services company had 7 sites, and they just are not getting anybody. They're closed down, so they just shut down their maintenance operation. It was a $7,000 a month contract. Any ideas on how should you deal with that?
Yeah, and that's a really tough situation right now. It's very unique. But I did spend, some of my background, I've spent 6 years with AT&T in a retention department. So it's very similar to a sales process. And what I would say first, if you're in this situation, if you have a client that's calling to suspend their service or cancel their service, first start with some discovery, show some concern, be understanding, of course, let them know that help them and then figure out why are they really suspending their services. A lot of times you're going to find that it's based out of fear that they don't, the uncertainty of, they don't know when this is going to
He's
end.
back.
Hey, Steve. So they don't know when this is going to end, or they don't, maybe there's a cash flow issue, and that's something that they really have to deal with at that time. So there's a couple things that you can try to do after you really know, but be understanding. If they have a major cash flow, offer to keep up basic services instead of the whole package, making sure that there's at least some sort of cash flow to your business and that their property gets taken care of. If you're able to do so, possibly extending terms, making it to where they can pay a smaller fee and then catch up later when all this is kind of over. Now there's a risk to that you take on, but that is a piece of it that you could do and could really help benefit certain clients. And then, the last piece I'll say to this is make sure that they understand the cost of letting their landscape go uncared for. This can be a big deal if landscapes get overgrown or things aren't taken care of. It can cost a significant amount of money to have to redo those things. So making sure that they understand that that investment could be massive when things change, and they might not even have a choice at that point. But and then the only other thing that kind of attaches to that is so that they know their local laws. Most of the time, municipalities have different laws in place about minimum landscape upkeep. So at the very minimum, most municipalities require you to have some sort of lawn maintenance to cut the grass and keep things trimmed back. So
good stuff. And especially this time of year, it's getting warm out here on the West Coast. I guess it's going to be 90 degrees, and without irrigation management and all that, landscapes can go to heck pretty quick. Thanks for that input. And for those of you that are out there who want more information on marketing, sales, and websites, Chris is on standby. We've got Steve back on. So Steve, you're back. You're back.
Hey. Yeah, sorry about that. Sorry about that, everybody. For some reason, all the sound went dead. So I rebooted the computer, rebooted the phone, and now I'm back. So I apologize for whatever happened. So apologize for the delay.
No problem, Steve. We can pick up right now. Folks, we have the gnarly questions that a lot of you sent in and wonder about. And Steve has the answers. Well, we hope you do, right, Steve?
Let's hope so.
All right, let me start. One of my employees just returned from a family vacation to Texas. Can he come back to work immediately?
The answer to that is yes. This comes down to the company policy, Ed. Every company has their own policy, and the part of the policy should say that as part of their COVID-19 strategy, they're going to look at travel restrictions internationally as well as domestically. For example, 3 states, New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut, have been on the high risk list. Now, if somebody's traveling to or from those states or coming back from those states, extra caution should be taken. I have not heard about anything being from Texas, but again, it's a company policy that says where we're going to screen them, test them, or maybe even quarantine them if they're coming from a high risk state. Company policy.
Gotcha. Okay, thanks. Another one, Steve, is a major client has just canceled one of my large construction jobs due to fear of COVID-19. Now, many of my employees, especially the ones on that particular job, they don't have work anymore. Do I pay them sick leave since the job closed due to COVID-19?
The answer to that is no. Employers do not have to pay employees if there's no work to be performed. Essentially, it's like a rain day. So if they're closing because of COVID-19, there's simply no work for them to perform. You don't have to pay them sick leave because they're not sick. There's not work for them to perform, therefore they do not get paid.
Gotcha, thank you. Can independent contractors receive unemployment benefits? This has come up too.
Yeah, I've had this one several times too, Ed. The answer to that is yes. It's one of those things. Keep in mind that unemployment is a state program. And just because independent contractors may think they get unemployment benefits, they may not get as much of the benefit as they think they're going to get. Because to get unemployment benefits in most states, you have to pay into the unemployment fund. Many independent contractors don't pay into that fund because, again, they're independent and they're making those payroll deductions from their company account. So yes, they do qualify. They should check with their own state unemployment office to see how much they're possibly going to get.
Awesome.
I have a couple of questions, Harvester Ed.
Yes, sir.
Here's one for you, Steve. One of my employees just spent the last 2 weeks at home with his wife, who was recovering from COVID-19. She is now non-contagious, and he wants to return to work on Monday. What do I do?
Yeah, I mean, he can come back to work. If he has no symptoms, he can go back to work. And that's a good question, Bill, because what has happened over the last several weeks with doctor's notes has been very important. Probably 2 or 3 weeks ago, doctor's notes were becoming more and more mandatory. Now with the influx and overwhelming people getting doctor's notes, more doctors have gone to an automated response. So now what they're basically saying is, if you think you're contagious, send an email or call the doctor's office. And the doctor's office will say, I can't have you tested now, but if you think you have these symptoms, coughing, shortage of breath, fever, stay home. And if the symptoms get worse over the next couple of days, we may have to schedule you for some test. But in the meantime, let's play it safe. So stay home. So for this particular case, if this guy was watching over his wife while she had it, and he's not demonstrating any symptoms, he can come back to work. But if he has any of those symptoms, he should call the doctor and get some type of email or voicemail just alerting him to the fact that he should stay at home or come back to work. But if he's not demonstrating symptoms, he should be okay.
All right, here's another one. One of my employees' wife has been watching so much television coverage of the COVID-19 outbreak that she has developed panic attacks. On Monday, due to these panic attacks, my employee had to take her to the doctor. Does he qualify for the revised sick leave coverage?
The answer to that is no. Also, again, I've heard this one several times. First off, shut off your television, because people are just getting caught up in the media frenzy. And we all admit that this is a serious issue, but it has to be sort of maintained. So no, he does not qualify for sick leave because nobody in that family, him or his wife, has COVID-19. And it's sort of funny, Bill, I've had a couple of calls after that on that same issue, where people have requested hazard pay, or and they don't get hazard pay for this. Had another couple of people who have sent emails to me. My employees now are, because of COVID-19 and all the stress associated with television and the media, believe it or not, they are now petitioning for post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. So they're actually going to their psychologists and doctors saying, because of COVID-19, I can't function because I'm so stressed out. So it's one thing leading to another. So in answer to your question, that person does not qualify for sick leave coverage.
Here's another one. I have a part-time employee who's fearful of contracting COVID-19. I think we all are, aren't we? Accordingly, she has demanded that I allow her to work from home and provide her with a laptop, printer, etc. Do I have to accommodate that request?
Nice try. Yeah, the answer to that is no. Yeah, I mean, again, she cannot make any of those demands. Now, the issue about teleworking is obviously at the company's discretion. I don't know how many part-timers would be able to get that. And again, she does not have COVID-19. Nobody in her family has COVID-19. She is just fearful of it. And that level of apprehension does not allow people to get the sick leave pay or make demands for telework, or requesting an employer to give them a laptop or a printer or a mouse or a cell phone to work at home. The answer to that is no.
Let's see if Ed has some more questions.
Oh, I do. Here's some more gnarly ones, Steve. One of my employees has a heart problem in the past. Her cardiologist has informed her that she not work at the office anymore. And as such, the employee has told me that she will not report to work anymore due to COVID-19 and her previous heart problem. What should I do?
So her doctor is obviously a cardiologist, and COVID-19 is a respiratory problem. So again, I think without a doctor saying that she cannot come to work because of COVID-19 symptoms, I think she basically just takes leave without pay. Because, I mean, she can come to work if she wants. If she doesn't want to come to work, she doesn't have to. But again, she does not qualify for sick leave unless the doctor says that her symptoms are respiratory in nature that prevent her from going to work, not cardiological problems.
So in other words, it would have to be in writing.
Or an email, because like I said earlier, 3 weeks ago, they were all writing from the doctor's handwritten notes. But now some of the doctors or the licensed physical nurse practitioners are actually sending emails to the patients now, so they don't have to come into the office. So some type of correspondence written, that would be correct.
Yeah. At a recent tailgate training session, my employees told me that I cannot terminate their employment if they're on paid sick leave due to COVID-19. Is that true?
The answer to that is no. Again, they can be terminated. First off, they're at-will employees. Secondly, if the company is losing money or that person's job ceases because of a lost job, then that person could be terminated. Now, if the employee is basically saying the employer is retaliating against me because I'm taking sick leave, that would be a different story. But if the company is losing money or does not have enough money to support the employees, they can be terminated at any given time during this COVID-19 crisis.
Mm-hmm. Another is, can I require those employees who have COVID-19 to wear a special color safety vest or colored armband while they're at work?
Yeah, I don't think we want to stigmatize anybody. I would say the answer is probably no. That leads certainly to some type of discrimination, whether it be racial or gender, or certainly some type of HIPAA violation where we're stigmatizing people. I would strongly encourage that not to happen. And it's one of those things along those same lines, Ed. The rule is this: if one of our employees does get sick and he or she cannot come back to work, we are not to mention that employee's name out loud. So if somebody says what's going on, all we're supposed to say is one of our employees has contracted the COVID-19 virus. Is it Jimmy or is it Johnny? We're not supposed to give the person's name just out of protecting their personal identity. Even though people may think they know, the employer should not mention the employee's name to divulge that personal information about COVID-19 onset.
Good point, Steve. So that situation is a situation where they had it. They don't have it at the present time. They wouldn't be at work. That's for sure.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, but the company can't say, oh, in case you guys are looking for Jimmy today, he's not here because he has COVID-19. That would be illegal. Yeah, we don't want to specify his name. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I think that's an important point for all employers. Good point. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
I believe still, Steve, Bill has some further questions.
Well, I think, Ed, in the interest of time, Ed, you want to move over to the face mask questions and the fines?
We certainly could. Listen to this. When there isn't a requirement for masks, can an employer force employees to wear masks?
Again, company policy decision, the answer to that is yes. I mean, certain companies require employees to wear goggles in their yard at all times or the shop area at all times. So again, a face mask would be another form of PPE. So the key word there is force. I mean, we're forcing them to abide by the company policy for safety. We're not picking on the employees in a coercive way individually, but that's a company policy. The answer is yes.
Yeah. And can our employees get a ticket from authorities for not being at home?
Yeah, that's based upon state and local jurisdictions. Obviously, we've heard tremendous horror stories lately about, a guy from Pennsylvania called the other day, and one of his guys was out joyriding just on a Sunday, and the state trooper pulled him over, said he had a bad taillight, and the state trooper said, "What are you doing out?" He said, "I'm just driving around." The cop gave him a $1,000 fine on the spot. Now, that's not every state. That was Pennsylvania. Likewise, Bill and I, living in California, know about Riverside County, that if you're found outside at any given time in your front yard, driving around without a mask, that's an immediate $1,000 fine. So again, that is based upon local or state jurisdiction.
Yeah, the good news there, Steve, I just got a notification. The golf course I live nearby is opening up, but you have to wear a mask, and there's only one golfer per golf cart. So
yeah,
we can do it in California, even with our masks on.
Yeah, and it's funny because, again, just to be, sardonic for a second, I saw a couple of joggers the other day on the street in California, and they were jogging with masks on. So it just seems a little paradoxical to me, but yeah, it's their choice.
Holy cow. This is follow up to that same question before. Is the $1,000 fine only in California, or are they issuing fines in South Florida with regard to wearing the mask?
Again, local jurisdiction, I've heard those are the two worst places. Now I think South Florida is lightening up a little bit, but like I said, I heard from Pennsylvania the other day, just for somebody driving around, not wearing a mask, but being outside for the for violating this shelter-in-place order. So there are many different reasons to get the $1,000 fines. But again, I don't think the harvesters know all 50 states. I think we know quite a few of them. But everybody should check with their local authorities at the city level, and then the county level, and then the state level, just to play it safe. Because $1,000, that's a big, heavy fine.
Yeah. I got it. Okay, so let's go back to Harvester Bill. He's got some more.
Ready?
Yeah. So let's see. I'm in the process of interviewing 2 foremen. Has the COVID-19 outbreak my interview process? So I don't want to get sued for doing anything wrong here. So how does it change for interviewing?
Yeah, the answer there is yes. It's sort of funny that we say that, because I've read a lot about this lately, and they've loosened the laws quite a bit. So in general, you can ask interview questions to job applicants about COVID-19, but only after they get a conditional job offer letter. So for example, after a conditional job offer letter, you can say, do you or anybody in your family have COVID-19? Only after you've given them a conditional job offer letter. Also, after a conditional job offer letter, can we take somebody's temperature? Yes, after the conditional job offer letter. Can I ask an applicant about their recent travel to high outbreak areas? Yes, but only after a conditional job offer letter. And you should not ask it in general. You should say, have you been to any of these places, or where have you traveled in the last 14 days? So keeping in mind that certain window. So yeah, Bill, you can ask some questions, but not as interview questions, only after a conditional job offer letter as a screening type of question.
Got it. Hey, so it sounds like some of our audience people have some questions for you, Steve. And for those that are listening and watching us, this is Steve's contact information on the slide we have right now. And we want to make sure that you probably know by now, Steve knows his stuff. HR is his life. This guy is incredible. He even puts his phone number down here. So he's got his HR headquarters here in San Diego, and feel free to give him a call. He loves this stuff, and you can tell, can't you? And then
it's a play off of Bill's point. I mean, and again, I apologize for being on the phone late, but seriously, folks out in the audience, we just appreciate you participating as part of the Harvest Group in this webinar in particular. But certainly, like Bill said, certainly call me at 760-685-3000 at any given time, because it's better for us to talk over the phone rather than having long-winded typed questions on emails. But whatever's best for you, I'll try to meet your expectations. So call me anytime. Back to you, Bill.
And if you visit our website, you can look at this. You can there's a virtual human resource opportunity to have Steve be on your virtual HR team. So Cindy, do you have some questions for Steve from our audience?
I sure do. So Steve, with regard to paid time off, or with regard to schools being closed, the law is very confusing. There's many small landscape companies out there. What are companies supposed to do?
Yeah, I think that's a good one, Cindy. So again, that's based upon the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, so the FFCRA. So that's the law that went into place on April the 1st. And so with schools being closed, that then basically allows employees, because of the school being closed due to COVID-19. Now, if they're closed because of an earthquake or some other reason, then the answer is no. If it's closed due to COVID-19, and the school could be either a school or it could be childcare. And childcare does include babysitters, by the way. So it's a very broad definition. If they're closed, the employee can then petition his or her employer to get up to 12 weeks off. There has to be some type of documentation from the school district saying that the school is closed due to COVID-19. The employee can then stay home and watch over his or her or their children for up to 12 weeks and receive up to 2/3 of their pay, up to a $200 maximum per day. So if they have any questions, feel free to give me a call, but that's the rule now. Up to 10 or 12 weeks. The first 2 weeks are usually unpaid. That's when they would take their sick leave. The next 10 weeks, it's at 2/3 of their pay for closed schools due to COVID-19.
And with regard to masks, should there be written documentation regarding the face mask policy? And if yes, what should be included in that document?
Yeah, it's a good point. And it's funny that you say that. I came across an article the other day from OSHA that's called The Guidance on Preparing Workplaces for COVID-19. OSHA, Guidance on Preparing Workplaces for COVID-19. It's about a 35-page article, so I don't expect everybody to read it. But it talks about a couple key things about putting together a policy, not only for the present, but also for the future if COVID-19 or some other illness pops up. And the first thing they talk about, five quick points. First, obviously, the first part of the policy should monitor state, local, and federal guidelines, which obviously makes sense. Second, do a risk assessment of all your employees, and then categorize them by high, medium, and low. High-risk employees are international travelers, healthcare workers, elderly people, and such. Medium risk are people who work in schools, restaurants, and retail settings. Low-risk employees are those not working usually within 6 feet of each other with minimal public contact. So I think for landscapers or construction workers, most of our employees would be low risk. To Cindy's point, the third part of the policy talks about infection prevention. And this talks about masks in terms of style, validity, rigor, and changing them out. It also talks about hand washing and basic hygiene procedures, using hand wipes with 60% alcohol. Actually, a construction guy called me last night at about 9 o'clock, and he asked me if they can't get Clorox, they haven't been able to get Clorox wipes because of short supply. So what they have been doing, believe it or not, they've been going to Bevmo, which is a liquor store out here, and they've been buying 1.75 liters of Everclear alcohol. Okay, that's the stuff that Ed drank when he was younger. So Everclear alcohol, like 200 proof, and they're actually using that to clean down their equipment. So as long as the hand wipes have 60% alcohol or 100% for Everclear, that should be fine. Also, in terms of infection prevention, respiratory etiquette, coughing into your elbow or hand, social distancing, keeping desks, equipment, and vehicles clean, and making sure that the PP, like Cindy said, masks, making sure that people are wearing them correctly, because some people don't. They put them over their mouth, but not their nose. One more thing they just said, in terms of identifying and monitoring COVID-19 employees, on April the 8th, the federal health officials at the CDC said, if somebody does have, essential workers have those symptoms, they are not required to stay at home for 14 days. We can watch them at home, at work. They don't have to go home if they're not developing any symptoms. So that's kind of nice. And the last point is, OSHA has said because of the overwhelming thrust of COVID-19, they will not enforce its record-keeping requirements for most employers. They will do it for firefighting, law enforcement, medical employees, but they will not enforce using COVID-19 as something on somebody's workers' comp claims. So to answer Cindy's question in a long roundabout way, that OSHA document, Guidance on Preparing Workplaces for COVID-19, talks about some key points. Certainly talks about masks as well as other useful information.
Okay, great, Steve. Is it legal to take employees' temperatures when they come to work?
Yes.
Do you recommend it?
It's happening more and more all the time. The Department of Labor has loosened that regulation about 3 weeks ago, Cindy. And again, I think it's one of those things, if they don't have any symptoms, it's certainly a company policy. They can do it as long as they just don't do it just for certain employees. So they can't just do it just for the women or just for the old folks or just for, the field workers. They'd have to do it for everybody or somebody demonstrating those symptoms. Certainly a company decision, but it is legal.
Makes sense. Okay, one more right now. If you make an initial job offer letter and then that candidate comes down with or has COVID-19, can you rescind that job offer?
Technically, the answer to that is no. You're supposed to reestablish a new start date. So you can't fire him or her or rescind the offer because he or she just happens to be sick or ill, because it's a temporary illness. But you would have to reconfigure a new start date for that person.
Okay, thanks, Steve.
Thank you so much, Steve. That was really awesome. Now we're going to go to Harvester Fred, and he's going to cover a little different slant to this. We're going to move on to the PPE and talk about his peer groups. Harvester Fred?
Thank you, Ed. Yeah, let's talk about H2B first. A lot of people out there are H2B users. In the last webinar that we had, there was a conversation about the 35,000 additional visas being approved, that they were probably going to be canceled, and since then that has become official. They have been canceled. Something happened yesterday, and we have initial reports from the presidential order restricting or closing down immigration. We're trying to find out more information right now, but early indications are that it will shut down all H-2B visas from coming in that are not related to the food chain. I know NALP and a couple other groups are pushing back and trying to get clarification right now, but the presidential order was issued last night, so we don't have a lot of details on that. So again, if you're using H-2B and you have not got your workers yet and you're anticipating them, be talking to your agent, but also make plans accordingly to move away from that, from depending on H-2B. We have 20 million people have become unemployed in the last 4 weeks in this country. There's a lot of opportunities out there to really start recruiting those folks out there that have been left go of their jobs. Not all of them are going to stick once we spring back and they're going to go back to their other jobs, but some of them will. Some of them will stay because they've never really given us a chance before. So understand that you have an opportunity here to find domestic workers in a more plentiful situation than we've had for many years. So take advantage of this if you have openings or if you have H-2B people that have not arrived yet on that. And then we'll continue to monitor the situation with the H-2B program and find out the implications of the order that came down yesterday. And if there's any clarification or improvement, we'll get back to everybody on that. So again, keep recruiting, keep looking for people out there. So I've got some good news regarding the peer groups. In the last 2 weeks, we've seen that the payroll protection program is starting to work. It has some issues, but it is starting to work. I have received reports from 20 different peer group members in the peer group community that they have gotten their SBA approvals, and 14 companies have now reported in that they have received their funds. Okay, that is up from, I think we had 2 to 3 on the last call. So that's the good news. Payroll protection program is continuing to move along, and I'm telling everybody to continue to apply. If you haven't applied, apply. Yes, it has run out of money temporarily, but it's going to be refunded, and you need to be in the queue for that. And that's something that we're talking to all the peer group members about on that. So so be aware the peer groups are working together, in a real collegiate manner, working together to find solutions to the problem and help each other get through the issue. Where they're starting to work on SWOT analysis plans for their companies to try to see, where do they stand right now in the current reality with strengths and weaknesses internally and externally for opportunities and threats that they need to work on. They're all working on 30-day budget forecasts, trying to look at things, and we're talking about preserving cash, preserving liquidity through those kind of processes. So again, the peer groups are working together, sharing those information, sharing the different things that they're doing, and helping each other get through the process. So again, that's kind of the update. Good news on the payroll protection plan. I think there's supposed to be a vote in the next couple of days to refund it. And like I said, if you haven't filled out your application, do it now and get it in so you're in the queue on that. And the other thing we're talking about, and I think it's working consistently, it has from the work inside the peer groups, is that you need to micromanage your bankers. this process. Do not let days go by without contacting them and letting them know that you're still out there waiting on that. I'm recommending that you call them every 2 days and keep the pressure on, keep their foot on the pedal, and don't let this thing go by. Again, another lesson that's coming out of the peer group community is that the local and regional banks seem to be the ones that are the most successful in dealing with the payroll protection plan and getting the applications in, getting them approved, and getting the funding. Where the problems seem to be happening are at the large national banks. Seems to be the most problems. And the one that I hear consistently, and I have a couple clients that that work with, is Wells Fargo. So if you're a Wells Fargo person, I mean, I would keep the pressure on, call your banker there every day. And also, I think one of the lessons learned here is that we need to start looking at our relationships with bankers and start to wonder and start to think about whether we should be with some of these larger national banks, being small businesses, and maybe be affiliated with small or local or regional banks. And that is coming clear with the successes that are happening inside the peer group community. So again, that's the update on peer groups, H2B, and payroll protection that I have right now.
Good
Awesome.
stuff.
Thanks, Fred.
That's good stuff, Mr. Fred.
Do we have any further questions for either Fred or Chris or Steve?
Of course we do. Fred, with regard to the banks, I know that you've, you repeatedly say stay in touch with your banks. What do you do when the banks won't talk to you? They won't take your calls, or they say that it's out of their hands, it's the SBA. I mean, what do you do?
You keep calling, and then at that point in time, you also need to let your congressman know and your senators know that this program, especially with this institution, doesn't seem to be working. And you can also reach out to the SBA. The program is put in place to help small business. For the most part, it seems to be working. It's not perfect. It was rolled out, rather rapidly, but I just I know one of my clients down in Florida was getting the runaround from the bank over the phone, and he went and parked in the drive-through lane and said he wasn't going to move his car until the bank manager came out and talked to him. So they moved over to the other part of the parking lot and had a conversation across, maintain safe social distancing across the hood of the car. But you can't be shy about dealing with these kind of things. And again, I know the conversations now in the peer groups are, if I've been dealing with a large bank or national bank, maybe after this is over, I need to reset my relationships with a smaller bank that is more interested in knowing me as a partner on that. That's not going to help right now, but again, though I did have one client that was with Wells Fargo that moved all of his banking down the street and got his loan approved. So, that's kind of I don't know how effective that's going to be right now in the rush of things, being a new customer. But for him, it worked. So, again, we have to pull out all the stops on this, because that program is for small business.
Mm-hmm. Excellent, Fred.
Okay.
Any more, Cindy?
Sure. Bill, with regard to buying and selling businesses, is it a good time to buy a business right now, even if some of those contracts may be suspended, or may never come back? I mean, what are your recommendations with regard to, buying and selling businesses at this time?
Well, we have plenty of buyers. We have lots of buyers out there. It's whether the seller is ready to go. The trends that a seller shows, they're going to look at the last 3 years, and most smart buyers can figure out the effect of the COVID. They're looking for good people. They're looking for solid contracts. But it'd probably be best to hold off, I would think, for a while until we see this thing settle out a little bit. And I'll refer at the very end here. We have a merger acquisition valuation expert amongst our harvesters, Allison, I'll have a slide at the end here if you have questions specifically for that. She's writing a blog for us on our e-newsletter on Fridays as well. So I'd say if I'm a seller, I'm going to hold tight a little bit unless I have to get out or really want desperately get out. Pricing is probably going to go down a little. If I'm a buyer, there's plenty of buyers out there. We have, I don't know, 6 or 8 buyers right now looking for businesses to buy. So if there's some interest in selling, we'd be happy to guide you through what you need to do to prepare for that.
Before we move on, I just wanted to thank Fred for his participation, and it's obvious that the peer groups you're working with are really working together to see their way through this. Isn't that true?
Yeah, I mean, you can, in one respect, you can go it alone and go through the thing. So, but working together instead of being alone, and knowing together instead of fearing alone has come out really strongly in the last 4 or 5 weeks inside the peer groups.
Yeah, awesome. Harvester Bill, you had some summation.
I do, and once again, it's pretty much what we talked about last time. These are challenging times, and we've seen some, but we've never seen anything quite like this, have we? All the harvesters here. It's been a unique experience, to say the least. And for any of those that are listening to us right now that have had people get this miserable virus or have succumbed to that, we have our feelings for you. So we've been thinking about you. So listen, it's important. Communication now is of the utmost importance with your employees and with your customers. So there's lots of methodologies to communicate today's technology. Ed and I had a Zoom conference this morning, didn't we, Ed? And it was pretty effective. And so lots of ways to communicate. And I think as a leader, it's important that you're visible and you're communicating like crazy, especially with those clients and employees. As Harvester Fred talking about, don't give up on the federal PPP program. It's going to be coming around, and as he had mentioned, stick with the smaller banks. We've had great success. I've had 3 companies on the West Coast here get close to $2 million in PPP program.
Yeah, Harvester Bill, I just saw a news flash come across on my phone that they have the White House and the House and the Senate have announced that they have reached a deal for refunding the Payroll Protection Act. So hopefully that is accurate, and they'll vote quickly to get that money flowing again.
Excellent, good update. And the other thing that we'd recommend, keeping track of your vehicles and people with GPS tracking system. Obviously, Verizon Connect is our sponsor and have a great program. It also tracks your management and maintenance of your vehicles and equipment as well. So it's a good time to keep that under your control there. And you may have some clients say, gee, you didn't show up, you weren't here for very long, and GPS will help you document that. And we've had several cases where that has come up. It's now better than ever to be a leader. And we're going to open up a leadership series with our friend Mary Kelly, Dr. Kelly. We've just signed up a program. We're going to be airing on May 4th on leadership during crisis. So we look forward to sharing with you her 7 steps of leading in crisis. Have a plan. As Mary mentioned today, have a worst scenario plan so you can get that out of your mind. You have your best scenario, then have kind of a realistic scenario of having a plan, 3 different levels. Cash, as Harvester Fred said so eloquently, cash is king, queen, and the entire royal court. Cash is important. So stay on your accounts receivable, get your billings out on time and accurate so there's no question that you're going to get paid. So cash is king, queen, and the entire court. I want to give you one of the things we came up with. This is from one of our customers in Northern California. It's if you can see it, it's a plastic divider in a truck, and there were some challenges. Not all of our workers have driver's licenses, and if we're asking them to drive their car to a job, multiple job sites during the day, that could put you in somewhat jeopardy as far as if they're in an accident or have some problems, they belong to us. So here's quite an innovative way. They put a plastic barrier between here to prevent the spread of any of that virus here. It's not 100%, but I think it's pretty innovative. That way you get two in a truck instead of one. So there's an example of how this one company has come. The innovation is incredible. Not sure what that is on top of the roof there, but pretty good stuff here.
Did they put that in the back also, Bill, to create compartments in the back of the truck?
This particular one's just a single cab here. So,
okay.
But you can put them in the back, and technically, I don't know if the front to back would make sense or not, but innovation, I would imagine, some maybe even dealer car companies, manufacturers, maybe even come up with this innovative idea as well. But pretty interesting.
Yeah. And that reminds me, I think that when Steve was talking about the face mask, while they're in these trucks, they should be wearing face masks, whether they have dividers or not. They should definitely.
Yeah, windows down, get the air out.
Down, that's right. I agree 100%. I've just got a few summation points that I want to reiterate. Don't stop marketing. You heard that from Harvester Chris. You want to keep that going. Don't stop selling. We're hearing some salespeople are sitting home, getting paid, and not even making phone calls. I mean, really, they should be really doing all they can to stimulate sales because the company needs the sales. We always say nothing happens without a sale. And what Bill always says, Harvester Bill, he says, don't stop recruiting. Always be recruiting. That's essential. And the last point, don't be fearful. There is a lot to be fearful of, that's for sure. But if you do planning and you're planning ahead and you're thinking it out together as a group, you're communicating with your people, you're communicating with your customers, it reduces fear. Remember, planning reduces fear. And then don't stop adapting. Look at the slide that Bill just showed. That was awesome. I never even thought about that. But with that, now it solves that problem of how do you get the people to the jobs without a license, and don't waste time. Right now, many of us we come home at night, or you're home already, and you have time to read. And so take the time to do reading. Find books that will enhance your career. And not to be too self-promoting, but hey, I might as well, right? The Harvest Group just came out with the account manager training program, and it's specifically for account managers. There's no other program like it. It's video and audio, and we think that it'll really help an account manager progress and be successful in his career. So that's something that you could do, on nights and weekends now during this crisis. So we want to thank everyone who's participated so far. Before we leave, we could take a few, maybe one or two more quick questions from Cindy if she has any. You have any, Cindy?
Sure, of course we do. So Steve, we have, a variation of questions around quarantine and that sort of thing. But if an office staff member tests positive and they have minimal exposure to the field crews, who needs to be quarantined? You don't need to close the entire company, do you?
No, you don't, Cindy. And that's one of those issues where sometimes the hysteria gets ahead of the facts. If a field employee gets it, you don't have to close the company. You don't have to close the job. You can obviously send him her home to get tested and take care of it. But anybody they come in contact with, you don't have to quarantine everybody. Just watch to see if they have symptoms. And if they do, then handle it accordingly. But don't have that rush to judgment where everybody comes in contact with him or the office or all the people in the surroundings have to be tested or quarantined immediately. So that would be a little bit too hysterical. Just monitor it with some degree of maturity. Track the symptoms. If somebody gets ill, take care of it. But if not, just watch it carefully.
We're going to go on for 5 more minutes. Some of you folks may have to drop off, but this is the end of the hour. But if we have a few more questions, and we want to continue for those who'd like to hear them. You want to, Cindy?
All right, Steve, if an employee is being quarantined by a medical professional for an out-of-work exposure, does the company need to pay him to stay home?
Yes.
Okay. Let's see. This is kind of a long one, but so if an employee shows up for work 3 weeks ago, he did not feel well, sick, feverish, they isolated him, sent him home, and he was supposed to contact a doctor. He missed 8 days of work while awaiting the opportunity to take a test and then get the result, which turned out to be negative. After all that, do we owe him compensation for those days off?
Yeah, that's a good one, Cindy. And I've heard this one too. This is a kind of company decision, and I think most of us are now deciding to err on the side of caution, so to prevent a possible outbreak. So, do we have to pay him? We don't have to, but we'd rather have our employees be safe and at home than coming to work and being risky. So, if he was sick and he has no sick leave program, and the doctor said he could have had COVID-19 symptoms, we probably should pay him to save him to play it safe for ourselves, our customers, and the community. I would recommend yes, but obviously that's a company decision.
Yeah, I could mention that situation that my sister-in-law was telling me, that a fellow worker was notified by her employer that she was in the company of a person that had the COVID. So they said they wanted to go home immediately and stay there for at least a 7-day period. And she went home, and on the morning of the 4th day, she started getting symptoms, and then she got full-blown COVID-19. And she said she never had anything like it in her life. So you can see that just being around someone like that, you can get it. So we have to err on the case of safety here.
Caution.
Yeah,
caution. I agree.
Yeah. Cindy?
So with regard to, if you're not symptomatic, if you've been around someone at work but you're not symptomatic, do you automatically quarantine?
No.
Just when they start to show symptoms?
Yeah, because again, it's just because it's just like the cold or the flu. Maybe your husband or wife or girlfriend or child could have a cold or the flu. That doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get it. Sometimes you don't. But again, just watching somebody personal condition, like I just mentioned about his sister-in-law's friend, if they develop a fever or start coughing or sneezing or heaven forbid getting shortage of breath, then that would lead to some type of follow-up. But we would just monitor people in general because everybody has their own unique immune system. Some people are stronger, some people are weaker. And keep in mind, most of the, and again, echoing Harvester Bill's comments, that we are mournful for everybody who has been affected. But by the same token, most of the people who have been affected are either elderly and or people who have previous respiratory conditions. So most of our employees aren't like that, okay? So they're not in that high-risk category. But nevertheless, if someone does come in contact, we would err on the side of caution and watch over them. And if they do demonstrate a fever or coughing or shortage of breath or some type of respiratory illness, let's send them home and take care of it in a protocol fashion.
I think that's all the time we have, Cindy. We've used our 5 minutes. We'd like to thank Verizon Connect as our partner with their fantastic GPS systems and Boss LM software. We know that really can help companies to track and monitor and understand their finances. We also want to give recognition to two harvesters that were not with us. There you see we have our, if you go back one, you can see that's our website if you want to go back to the website. There you go, Harvest Landscape Consulting. And then we have the breakouts. Oh, there's the harvesters, the motley crew. And there's all of our, that's Steve, Chris, Cindy's email address if you want to talk to us directly. And I believe we've got more. We got Fred, Bill's, and mine. So again, we want to thank you so much. Head Harvester Judd wasn't on the call, neither was, and Judd is in Atlanta, and Harvester Allison is in Chicago, and she heads up our mergers and acquisitions company. So if you have questions in design build, that's for Judd, or questions on mergers and acquisitions, or anything that's related to COVID, when it's a financial matter, then Allison would be the one to talk to. Again, thank you again. Just keep moving forward, keep selling, and be optimistic. Thank you for all. See you next time.